everyone. We allocated about $40,000 in pre-semester proposals at our meeting this weekend. As you'll see, the senior ball was tabled, but that will likely be approved. It will be approved. It's just a matter of working out some of the details because the budget wasn't very itemized. There's also the Kono annual charity auction, which was a big one. Archery Club, which is a new club, was asking for just their variable and fixed costs for the entire semester. Newman lunches and a trip, and then I think there's one more above it.
Above?
Yes, the Well, which is a weekly event at University Church. Does anyone have any questions? Oh, sorry, and a trip to La Martinique for the French Club.
Are there any questions for Laurel about this week's meeting, the BAC semester in general, what it's looking like going into the spring? Any questions? Now would be the time to ask Laurel. Yes.
Yeah, I was going to ask, what is it looking like going into the spring?
Going into the spring? It's tough to tell now because we do not know how much is going to roll back from this semester. Last semester we saw about $70,000 in rollbacks. We are hoping to God that that's not the case again because that shouldn't be happening. So right now we're looking at, I would say about $410,000 going into the spring semester, but that is including block grants, which will obviously be taken out. And we also, this year, for the first time, we're doing a $15,000 block grant for career services. It will all be student-initiated trips, but it's basically a block grant so that students applying for BAC funding for career-related trips will be working with career services as opposed to just doing it on their own. And that was a request through CLSI and Career Services. They've been working on that for a while, and that finally got figured out for this coming semester. So.
Derek?
Is that $15,000 going to be an annual allotment or a one-time one?
It's going to be a semesterly allotment. But it's for things that have typically happened in the past. It would be like a Colgate Women in Business trip to New York City,
yeah.
Which we funded in the past, but they would just use that block grant and work with Career Services just so that it goes more seamlessly.
Okay, thank you.
Also, just after the forum yesterday, Taylor Bailey mentioned that they would like, or she brought up the idea of having student DJs be paid, and I thought that that was a really interesting idea. It's something that I've talked about with Drew before. I'm not really sure where that would exactly start, but I think that that's something that we should really look into for next semester and possibly change, because I think that that could really incentivize seeking talent on our own campus as opposed to bringing in more expensive talent from elsewhere. So, just a side note.
Oh, I also have a question. Yesterday in the forum they mentioned like not allotting money for like water bottles. Is that true? Or
yes, so that's a sustainability initiative that I think we started about 2 years ago, and that is under the assumption that people would be able to get water jugs and coolers, which I think is a great initiative, and we're going to keep it in place, but obviously not for events where there will be alcohol. I think in that case, obviously, we would take that into consideration. I'm glad she brought that up because I think that that was a really important point.
Any other questions for Laurel? All right, thanks, Laurel. David.
So we have criteria that we're putting into bylaws this coming semester. We weren't able to get it together as soon as we wanted because we have BAC approvals today by Senate. We approved 4 people. That's what I'm covering for SOC too. So.
Great, thanks, David. Molly.
Okay, so Save the Association, Derek already mentioned 7 o'clock on Thursday in the hall. There will be rig, invite your friends. Additionally, thank you for this past semester on Senate and for letting me be your parliamentarian for the last year.
Thank you, Molly. Nataki? No? Any update in terms of secretary? No? Nothing. Okay. A little bit from me. Just a reminder that we are live, so I don't know, keep that in mind. Later in the meeting, when we get down to new business, I'm going to make 2 motions. I'm going to motion to slash the newsletter bill. This is my fault. I didn't realize it was a constitutional change. We would be seeing the bill now and then essentially voting on it the first meeting of the spring, which I don't think makes sense because there will be new senators who won't have seen the bill. Feel free to shoot down that motion, but I will be motioning to do that. And I will also be motioning to replace it with a conversation on yesterday's forum, which is a great transition. Thank you all for coming. Turnout was astounding. I never imagined that when I started talking to Dean McLaughlin about doing that we would fill the entire chapel, which is essentially what we did. So thank you all for coming, for voicing your opinions, for telling your friends to voice their opinions. I think Dean McLaughlin really got to hear some things that he that he'd never heard before, which I think is absolutely the point of the forum. So I thought overall that was a success, and we can talk about it later. Yeah, State of the Association on Thursday, but you already know that, and let's have a great last meeting. Yeah. Okay. AAC.
Can you do me a favor and put the SGA website up on the board? Can you just show everyone where the academic resources are?
Yep.
I think you guys all know that they're up there by now, but in case you don't know where they're actually located, or just to tell your friends. And then also, just under resources. Yeah, so we still have more to add to that, and then hopefully next semester more people will add the state committee will add more. Yeah, those aren't quite.
But we talk about what's going to happen next semester.
Yeah, well, next semester, officially, all the faculty web pages will have the professor's office hours up automatically. And then we will also have access to all of them, so we can still update our resources and still have a full list, which will be really nice. So yeah, and then we have a few other resources, but just, yeah, keep that in mind. Kurt said it's gotten a lot of traffic, which is great, but additionally, we are planning the Raider Roar, so you should all come out to that next Thursday. We'll have pizza and other things, I'll advertise that. Also, last time I'm going to talk about the stapleless staplers. They have been ordered and they should be here. There are 2 on the circulation desk. So if you use them, let me know your feedback. Yeah.
Is there any progress on getting professors to put the course materials on course pages?
Yeah, I brought that up a few weeks ago and they immediately shot that down because they don't, there's a lot of reasons why they don't want to put their syllabi up early. It has to do with like, what's their academic integrity, something about like not wanting to publish it. I don't know, it's like their property. I can go more into detail, but yeah, I was surprised as well, but they have tried to do that in the past and the professors are just not into it at all. I did bring up your point also, they didn't. Yeah.
Great work on the academic office hours. That's great. The resources. EAC?
Well, we have a meeting with the mayor on Friday. Things get scheduled slowly in local government, but we'll be having it.
Okay. Anything else you want to report?
Nope.
Great. GAC?
Unfortunately, we weren't able to meet this week, but a couple of us had spent this past week working on the bill based on the discussion we had last week.
All right. Thank you. SAC?
So SAC is pretty much kind of winding down as the semester gets to its end. Biggest update that we have to report is probably on Brenda Tracy. So we're pretty much just working on getting the contract figured out now, so it is happening. And we're looking to get a fundraiser for basketball while she's here. So that'll be going on like during her visit, and then we'll like bring her on and have her there during the game.
Awesome. David, did you have anything? No? Okay. CLC?
Alright, I have a few just like last semester events to announce. This Saturday, we're planning a free bus for all students to Syracuse men's basketball game against Colgate. So we're going to send out a Google form, I think tomorrow or the next day, just with sign-up details, and then we're requiring students to put down a $10 deposit to save their spot on the bus, but if they don't show up, the $10 is spent, but if they show up, they get the money back. So it's just a way for us to kind of see how many students are going to come to the event, and we have free tickets for transportation, so that's noon on this Friday. This upcoming Monday is the 2018 Cheese Fondue study break in the Botza room. So the 2018 class will be getting emails to all the events, and then next Wednesday, the first years and sophomores are having an ELF screening in the Love Auditorium at about 7 p.m. I think. And then also that day at 6 p.m., the juniors have a study break in Parker Commons. Do you guys have any questions?
Thanks, Madison. Okay, so now we are going to hear about the Middle States report. Are the professors here? Oh, great. Do you have anything you want to put up here, or
No.
I can just turn off the projector?
Yeah, you can go.
Yep.
We are a well-oiled machine here as we're talking strategy right here as we're walking up. First off, everybody read the report, I assume? All 100 plus pages? I hope that at some point you'll at least look through portions of it. I think Luke sent out to you folks a nice index that breaks out some of the key topic areas. So, things that matter in particular to each one of you as individuals, I definitely encourage you to take a look at. But if you have time over break, you're bored, you got a sibling who's getting on your nerves, and you gotta get away, there's a lot of information about the institution, a lot of things I did not know when we began the process. An awful lot of it that I think is exciting and encouraging. Some things that are challenging, but we'd expect that too. We're a big, complex organization full of a lot of people, and we'll have exciting things, we'll have challenging things. But I think there's some neat elements to the report, and I do encourage you to take a look at it. The email that we sent out to students, and then staff got something like it, in fact, we got something like it as well, that asked for comments to be sent in by December 13th. That was, well, it would be ideally most helpful to us as we're ramping up to do the next and hopefully final revision of the report. But we're not going to shut down the Google site as of December 13th and stop accepting comments. So if you have a chance to look at things once the dust settles on the semester and submit things that way over the break, we'll continue to monitor the Google Sheet that this stuff's being put into. You're also welcome to reach out to us by email as well too. So don't feel like that December 13th date is a hard fixed thing. But anyway, I'm Rick Iyer. I guess I should have started there. I'm Rick Iyer. I'm a faculty member in the chemistry department, one of the co-chairs of this self-study review process. And
I'm Padma Kaimal. I'm chair of art and art history, and I direct core communities and identities. And quick tag. Sections 2 and 4 are the ones that are most likely to catch your interest. Those are the ones that are most about the student experience.
And in section 7, or chapter 7 on governance, there's also a portion that pertains to the student aspect of governance. We wanted to make sure that not only faculty, but students and staff got mentioned as well. So as SGA folks, you may find that particularly interesting too. Well, this is our third time in front of SGA. How many of you were here for either the first 2 times? So yes, some of you have seen us before. Inevitably, there is turnover that takes place. So I'll go back through some of the things that some of you have heard before, but I'll do it rather quickly. We were here last, I guess the first time we were here was in April of 2016, and we were just getting kind of rolling with the process at that point in time. Padma and I were named as co-chairs around December of 2015. Early in 2016, the steering committee was populated, and then we spent that spring semester designing the self-study, and that culminated in a draft of the self-study design that was shared with the community, much the way we did now the draft of the self-study report. And then we met with SGA at that point in time to get some thoughts on the self-study design and to talk about ways in which students may be involved in the process. Out of that discussion, 8 students were identified to serve as liaisons between the SGA and the Middle States process, and they've been helping out in that way. Then in November of 2016, we came back in front of the group, the end of November, a fall semester away from our first visit, and that was to give an update. We were partway through the self-study at that point in time. Last academic year was spent doing the bulk of the self-study work, and now we're in the reporting phase and eventually the evaluative phase. Our goals in coming here tonight are to real quickly, I don't want to indulge on your patience too much, real quickly talk about the self-study process, since inevitably there's been some turnover in the SGA, give a quick overview of the report preparation that you folks now have available to be able to look at, give a quick overview of remaining steps in the review. The report is not the end of the road with things. So in a nutshell, want to make sure that you have some information about the overall Middle States self-study process and have an opportunity also to obtain feedback to aid report and the revision. So if there are things you want to share with us tonight, we're happy to hear that while we're here. You're also welcome to continue to reach out to us after the session too, either through the Google site, via the link that you all were sent by email, or you can send us an email message as well. Middle States Commission on Higher Education, they are our regional accreditor. There are, I believe, 6 across the United States, and they're responsible for ensuring a reasonable degree of quality within higher education. They also ensure that certain federal requirements regarding higher education are being met and that state laws are being followed as well, in addition to their own particular criteria. Important to know that Middle States Commission on Higher Education reaccreditates a broad swath of academic institutions, from community colleges to schools like Colgate to much larger, PhD granting research type institutions. So their standards and their requirements of affiliation are broad to be able to encompass those kinds of institutions. In the process of our review, we're addressing their standards, but we're also contextualizing the standards to our particular environment, our particular niche within higher education. And our evaluation team that will come and carry out the actual review, they'll also be reviewing us within that lens of the kind of institution we are, our institutional mission. So it's helpful to keep that in mind. Guiding this process has been a steering committee comprised of the 2 of us. There are 7 faculty who chair one of the 7 working groups. There's also a representative from the library, an associate dean for administrative advising, an associate provost, and a representative from athletics. If I got everybody, there are 14 in all on the steering committee. Each working group has about 7 to 8 or 9 members, faculty, staff, administrator type folks. We have the SGA student liaisons that have also been involved in the process. All told, I know there's somewhere around 70 to 80 people that have been involved with this. On the student side of things, at the very early stages, we had our initial report to the SGA. Also, we've met with campus governance committees. A number of them have student representatives on it. Out of those discussions, a student liaison group to the steering committee and working groups was formed with 8 SGA students. There was a student questionnaire that was sent so long ago now, maybe some of you forgot it. The response rate, if you read the report, wasn't anything to write home about, but it ended up being at least reasonably representative of most demographic groups across campus, at least. But hopefully everybody in the room, those of you who aren't first-year students, everybody else in the room, had an opportunity to fill that out. We did have some attempt at focus groups to varying degrees of success as well. It's hard to nail busy people down, of course. And we've now disseminated the self-study report, and earlier we had disseminated the self-study design for feedback. The process, after the design was completed and approved, we had a year where the working groups carried out their work. That culminated with working group reports that were submitted to Padma and I late last spring throughout the summer months. Padma and I took a crack then at stitching things together into an initial draft of the report that was completed in early August. That was reviewed by the steering committee, the working groups, and senior administration, Brian Casey, our new dean of the faculty, Tracy Hicks, and of course our new dean of the college, Paul McLaughlin, had a chance to weigh in. There was a round of revision done at that point, which took us into October when the next version was ready. Our SGA liaisons then had a chance to look at it and provide some feedback, along with, we have 3 members of the Board of Trustees that also are liaising to the process. They had a chance to look at it as long as the Dean's Advisory Council, or DAC, for short. Another cycle of revision took place, which led them to the version that was completed in mid-November that was disseminated broadly across campus. Since that point in time, we've held some open forum for faculty, staff, and students. We've received a handful of comments via the Google site. Hopefully some more will come in once the dust settles on the semester. And then from that, we'll be preparing a final revision. Another exciting event that happened last week that at least the SGA liaisons would be aware of, our evaluation team chair was here on campus to set the stage for the eventual team visit. Our chair is the president of Bucknell University, and he's the one responsible for kind of setting things up for the self-study evaluation team visit and making sure that runs smoothly. So he was here for logistical arrangements, to make sure that we're properly prepared for the evaluation team visit, to give us feedback on our report, which luckily he found to be in pretty good form. That was a fingers crossed moment to make sure that there wasn't going to be a lot of work from his end to further do on the report, with the overarching goal of his visit to be to make sure that we're ready so when the team comes, they can carry out their work efficiently and effectively. The team will visit in mid-April of this coming spring. April 18th, I think, is when they'll arrive. They'll be here for 4 or 5 days, and they'll meet with many members of the campus community. Many students, I imagine, will be part of that. And their goal is to add additional information to support or better understand information that's found in the self-study report. The report itself is limited to 100 pages. So it's, I think, best to think of that report as an extended abstract of the institution. It can't possibly be fully comprehensive in every single area. I apologize as folks look through the report, guided by the index that was provided. If you go to an area that's particularly important and interesting to you, and we wrote this much and we didn't write that much, part of that is dictated by the 100-page limit. But the team will come and they'll have an opportunity to explore things further based on the important things they're interested in. You have a question?
Will the team also be writing their own report when they visit campus?
Yeah, so they will write a report upon the conclusion. So yeah, one of the more exciting moments, when the team is all finished, before they depart campus, the team chair will have an open session for the full community. Everybody can come, and the team chair will walk through standard by standard the strengths and challenges that Colgate is facing in them, and then an ultimate conclusion on whether or not we've satisfactorily achieved that standard. So they'll give us an oral summary of what their overall findings are at the time they depart from that visit. That'll all be announced in advance so folks can attend if you would like to do that. Then they'll prepare a written document after they've departed that will be sent to campus. We'll have a chance. Mostly goes to the senior administration, but I imagine we'll be in the loop at that point and we'll have a chance to see it. And we have an opportunity to be able to respond to it if there are things that are not correct or we don't agree with. I'm hoping there won't be anything particularly contentious, but I suppose if there is, we have a chance to write a one rebuttal, and then they'll produce a follow-up document. All of that then gets delivered to the Middle States Commission. The Commission is the ones who actually make the determination on reaccreditation. The team that's visiting us, they don't vote on that. They produce a report. The Commission will have our own report that we had produced, and then they'll make the ultimate decision. But our team chair will walk them through what the team found. And my understanding is it would be pretty unusual for the Commission to reach a radically different conclusion than the one we will get at the time that the team finishes their visit here. So what we have on the near term is to revise the self-study report. Not really guided very much by what our team chair had to say. We have essentially nothing to change based on that. But we have been getting some helpful comments from the community. I wouldn't say anything overly major, but there are a lot of factual things that are easy to get not quite perfectly right, and some of that's been pointed out, and we can correct that certainly easily enough. So we're working on that. that should be completed by early February. Minimally, it needs to be done 6 weeks before the team visits, so they have time to digest the report. There's a ton of supporting documentation. They also have accessible to them as well, in addition to the report that we're in the process of preparing to ready for them. So I think that is what I wanted to say there. So I guess a couple other important items to note. While the content of the report is guided by the Middle State standards, we did look for opportunities to connect to topics of institutional interest. So, for example, on the Working Group Standard 7 on governance, the Middle State standard focuses mostly on Board of Trustees level governance and senior administrative level governance, because many institutions operate in that way. They're primarily governed from the top. Our institution is, I wouldn't say we're unique, but we're in a smaller cohort of schools that have shared governance between faculty, staff, students as an also important part of the way institutions run. Since that's central to our being here at Colgate, there's a lot of that we worked into the Working Group 7 report. Research is another component that's not, it's not an expectation for accreditation. Different schools involve research, scholarly pursuits, creative pursuits in very different ways too, perhaps not at all. But that's an important part of what we do here at Colgate. Not just faculty, but many students are involved in scholarly activities as well too. So we found opportunities to be able to work that into the report. But we didn't work everything into the report because we're still guided overall by the 7 standards from Middle States and the requirements of affiliation. So there was this external audience that did have a role in what the final content was. Again, don't forget we're limited to 100 pages. We're currently a bit over that limit right now, so if you have long suggestions for additions, if you can give us corresponding selections for deletions too, that would be appreciated. And last thing I wanted to point out, the report needs to have an appropriate level of candor, transparency, honesty to it. This is not a whitewash job. So there are points in the report that you'll see where we're pretty pointed. And that's an expected part of this. When the team comes to visit, ideally they will have no surprises. There won't be a big issue that gets raised that wasn't anywhere in the report, something we tried to sweep away. There are some contentious issues on this campus as there are on any campus. We try to treat them as in a balanced way. I don't know if we fully succeeded or not, but we didn't want to ignore those issues either because they will come up, I'm sure, when the team is here and they're meeting with members of the community, and we needed to have those items within the report. The kinds of feedback we're looking for, certainly factual errors, if there's any glaring omission, any issues of clarity, things that just don't seem to ring true from your perspectives. We're happy to know about that. So that's what I had. Anything that you would like to add on?
I don't know how many of you have had a chance to look at it, but if you have questions at this point or if you have feedback, we'd really love to hear about that. I also wanted to single out Luke and Will and Ryan Stallings, who met with President Brovman when he was here last week. He was so impressed with the 3 of you. He said, "Those are fine young men." So I was very proud of them. Well, of course. But yes, anything you want to tell us right now, or questions that you have about the content, about the process. It's pretty blunt. We really just decided we'd rather tell them what we think the challenges are here at Colgate than have them discover them on their own and think we were trying to hide them. So it's juicy reading. Well,
so over the past year and a half, can't believe it's been that long, as well as the multiple discussions and after the visit by President Brovman last week, what do you think, in your opinions, as the co-chairs of the reaccreditation process, are the most obvious areas of improvement that Colgate needs to make, specifically in terms of the sections like 2 and 4 regarding student life? What have you noticed in those conversations that seem to be things we need to work on?
So we were blunt about substance abuse, sexual assault, campus climate, the fact that it's not an even playing field, that that student experiences are incredibly differential depending on what kinds of access they have. And instead of trying to say, oh, but we have a solution, or oh, we solved it already, what we said was, here are all the things that we've tried to do. We tried this program, we've tried that program, we have the residential commons in place, here's what we hope they do. So we just chronicled all the work that the faculty and the staff and the students have done over the 10 years since our last review to show that this is an institution that really cares. But we didn't say we solved it. We pointed out with faculty, that faculty are being drawn and quartered. We're being asked to do way too many things, and that creates that's a real challenge to morale. So, and the part of the problem is, of course, we want to do all those things. Like, we want to be in control of our own governance. We want to do our research. We really love teaching. And so, how does the institution keep faculty from total burnout? That was one of the challenges. And then we frankly talked about leadership challenges that we've had over the last 10 years and the different styles our presidents have had and what the consequences of those different styles have been. So, of course, with that we were trying to set up Brian Casey, like, see, that worked and that didn't. There's a lot of elbowing going on there. There's some other call-outs that you made?
Well, I guess what I'll add to the question, or maybe change the question slightly. Were there things that we encountered that issues on campus that were surprising or new to us? And to that I would say, no, not really. I think one of the things that has impressed me throughout the process is how self-reflective and self-critical this institution is. Honestly, sometimes a bit to a fault, I gotta say. We can be a little more glass half empty sometimes than glass half full. But I don't think there's anything that's called out in the report that's going to surprise anybody. I didn't know that this happened at Colgate. I wasn't aware that this would be an issue or not. Things like our mission statement. This is something very important. The middle states that a school has an understood mission, a clearly defined mission. They know what they are, how they fit in the landscape of higher education, and they make decisions, judgments. They set themselves up in accordance with their mission. We have a mission statement. It's old. It's dated. It's not been kept up to date. It has a little bit shaky history and how it even came into being. But that also wasn't a surprise. Now, this may be a good impetus to do something about that and open up that discussion at some point and have a group that will look at that and revise it. There's 45 recommendations, I think, in the end, throughout the report. They're covered in context, but also I think the last appendix in the report pulls out all the recommendations, working group by working group, and that'll get at some of the issues that we felt strong enough about to make a recommendation for the institution to address something or another to it. But I wouldn't say that there's anything within those recommendations that are particularly shocking or surprising. Most of the things I learned that were new and interesting to me were in more of the details. I wasn't aware of all the programming we've had in certain areas, but I was aware of the broader issue. But if we miss something, if there's something that you as students see there as an issue on campus, and where is this reflected in the document, that's something we definitely want to know.
We really want your feedback. We're not interested in being defensive about the document the way that it's written. If you can make it better, please make it better. Tell us what we're missing. Tell us if you, like, for example, we had the wrong number of student senators. There were 40 and there were 48, or we thought there were 48 and there were 40. I've forgotten right now. But anyway, like errors of fact like that, but also, so there could be errors of shading and tone. We're really begging you to give us that feedback. We're not going to argue with you. We're just going to put it in.
This is intended to be a community report. It's not the faculty report. Heaven forbid, it's not my report. We've had an editorial role in stitching things together, but we're not the crafters of it all. We didn't do all the independent research. Actually, I didn't do any of the research. That's part of it. That was done by the working group. So I have a nice degree of emotional separation from the report.
Questions? Thoughts? Tomatoes?
Well, I do hope when the team comes.
Oh, wait.
What was it? Yep.
Yeah, I have a quick question. I think this is kind of a lack of understanding exactly what this whole thing is. But who exactly reads this in terms of, like, who composes the committee of people that come from Middle States, and then who will read it outside of Middle States?
Yes. So nobody will read it outside of Middle States. This is a confidential document in that regard, so it doesn't get posted on, say, Middle States website for the whole wide world to see. So this is, internal. Yeah, it's hard, I know, in this day and age where everything's digitized. We did have brief conversation as a steering committee how to disseminate the report with the senior administration as well, and the fact of the matter is it made most sense to put it out there electronically as PDF files. You do have to have a Colgate Google account to be able to access the Google site, but beyond that, there's nothing to prevent somebody from sending the report to who knows where. But it's intended to be an internal document to be internally useful to the community. Beyond that, it'll be read by the 7 members, I think 7 members of the evaluation team, 7 or 8. It'll be read by the commission people, whoever they are. I don't know who we have a liaison to Middle States, Christy Faison, but I don't know who the other people are at the commission level that will do the reading and the final determination of things. And then that's it. On the commission website, there's just some very generic information about the various schools that are accredited, the last time they had a review, if there's anything messy about their review that they were dinged on, if they're suspended currently or whatever, that will be reported there. A little bit of factual information about the school, some statistical information about schools will be there, but not the full report. Internally, we'd like the report to have life beyond this moment. This is a 2.5-year process to do all of this. A lot of person hours went into it, a lot of thought and reflection, and we'd like to see follow through on this. Middle States ensures a degree of it. When we go through the review the next time around, we'll be expected to report on our recommendations and what we've done with things. So we can't make empty recommendations we don't plan on following through on, but you can follow through to different degrees. And it's going to fall to senior administration. It will fall to committees like the Advisory Planning Committee, groups like the SGA for areas that are particularly important to students, that this stuff not be forgotten. And over the next few years after the report, that this continues to serve as a useful document for introducing students to the school, or the community broadly to the school, to issues that were important at this moment in time, and things that we pledged to do about some of those issues.
My hope is very much that it serves as a useful internal document. All students have access to it, all faculty, all administrators, and it turned out with the timing that we were finishing our first draft of it just as Dean Hux and Dean McLaughlin were coming on board, as they were arriving at Colgate. So they both sat down and they read the whole thing, and they came back and met with us and they said, this is an excellent introduction to this institution. I feel like everybody who's hired here should read this, because it's like all the dirty laundry, all the great stuff we've done, all the things we really want to be. It's just spelled out right there. And President Brovman said, this is a refreshingly honest document. No problem. So this idea of implementing the stuff, there's a whole bunch of research, and then it says, so here's what should probably happen to solve these problems. And are we going to let this just sit in the library somewhere? Because there'll be a hard copy of the library. There'll probably be some sort of protected digital copy as well. It could just molder away, or you could take up the recommendations that have to do with your your sphere of action and try to actually follow up on all of this research. And many of these working groups have included students, they've included staff as well as faculty. So they're really rich documents. People worked incredibly hard to survey all kinds of different reports the university's produced over the year, all of the survey data that we collected from you and from staff and from faculty last spring. So please use it. Help us use it to make the institution better.
At the very least, one thing I'd like to direct your attention to in the report, actually is in the report itself, it's in the appendix. We have the breakdown from the survey data from the faculty, staff, and student surveys that were administered. There's some interesting reading there. We didn't put in all the written comments. That would have taken too long, and some of the written comments named individuals by name, and that wasn't appropriate to share. But we do have a breakdown of all the numerical Likert scale data that's there. And I think that for student leaders, I think that would be interesting to be aware of. You know, as you're thinking about the campus and things to want to affect on the campus.
If you think of some later, you can
Yeah. What is Colgate?
What is Colgate?
Sorry, I know it's late.
Colgate is a fascinating hybrid of a research institution and a small college. It wants to be both those things really, really well, and that creates a lot of tensions and opportunities. So what do we ask of ourselves? What do we ask of our students? What role do we put a president in who's trying to fundraise and find an identity for us? I have to say I'm really glad that we have Brian Casey in place for the final phase of this project, because he's really helped us break out of old thought patterns and see what we could be. I don't know if you've heard about this yet, but we just heard at the faculty meeting yesterday that Colgate and Columbia University are joining with MIT, Amherst, Pomona College, and what was the big California? Was it Berkeley?
I'll confess, I
weren't there.
had to
Okay.
leave by then.
Okay.
My son had a high school master's.
So the new tax bill that the House and the Senate have just, the bills that the House and the Senate have just approved, propose to tax higher education in ways that will make it very hard for us to continue to do what we do. So the three states attorney generals from Massachusetts, New York, and California have gotten together with two institutions from each state. A big research one university and a small college. And these 9 people, these 9 leaders are moving forward to mount the argument against these tax changes. Colgate and Columbia represent New York. The other small colleges are Amherst and Pomona. So what are we going to be? What are we right now? President Casey has a pretty exciting vision for what we're going to be. And I've been here for 30 years. I think it's possible. I think we could get there.
How will this tax bill you just mentioned affect Colgate if it passes in its current form?
So off the top of my head,
Really quickly,
the ones that I know. So it's gonna cost us so much money that we won't be able to provide as much financial aid.
How much money? What part of the bill's mandate that you pay?
I don't have the figures, but I can tell you that the endowment will be taxed. Right now, the endowment is not taxed. Our endowment just reached $900 million. That's a lot of tax that we would have to pay.
What part of the endowment will be taxed? Do you know?
I think it's the investment returns, but again, this is not my area of expertise. And that unfortunately is an aspect of the tax plan that's not been highly publicized in the media, at least the media outlets that I look at. So I just don't know. But my understanding is it's the investment returns on the endowment that would be taxed. But you have a $900 million endowment. I imagine that's reasonably significant. And given that a reasonable percentage of the endowment goes towards financial aid, that inevitably is going to take a hit. So if you folks are connected to any Congress people or senators, you can also do your best.
All right, well, thank you so much. Nick and Margot. All right, we're gonna get back into it.
Guys, bring it back together.
Okay, so just a little introduction. I'll take care of it. This past Monday, or Sunday rather, no, Saturday it was. Wow, look at how the days go. The new BAC members, there were 4 spots that needed to be filled. Not a committee, but cabinet members and Laurel and a bunch of people met, and we decided on these 4 people. 3 of them are returning, and Nick Quinn is a new member, or will be a new member if confirmed. So they're going to speak briefly. 2 of them couldn't make it. Manuel is abroad, and Jack had a mandatory lecture. They have a statement below that I'll read out after Margot and Nick speak. So they'll speak. They'll leave the room. Laurel and David will offer maybe an endorsement or an explanation, and then we will decide how to proceed from there. So Nick and Margot, whoever wants to go first, please.
So I'll just say why I wanted to be on the BAC again. I'm a CL for 50-something rowdy first years, and I just see a range of involvement in late night activity. And I think that one of the BAC's most important jobs is providing a lot of alternatives to late night programming. So I wanted to work to expand that and create a community that supports these alternatives.
I really want to be part of the BAC because, similar to Margot, I've also struggled with finding a place at Colgate to do something with late night programming, and I think being part of the BAC will give me the chance to actually impact late night programming and find things that people who typically aren't representative in late night programming with things such as Greek life on this campus. It'd be a nice way to help contribute to a community of people who are like myself. And additionally, like with friends at other schools, a lot of things that have been happening at other schools, they have a lot of programming during the day, and I feel like, and as well as at night, whereas here a lot of the academic things such as brown bags happen during the day. And I think that a really interesting thing what could happen would be more academic activities at night, like brown bags and things like that, because during the day people have classes and might have conflicting schedules with great lectures and brown bags that they'd like to attend, so moving them to later times would possibly be very beneficial.
I'm just going to quickly read the other statements, and then you will all have the opportunity to ask questions to Nick and Margot, and then eventually to Laurel and David.
Want a personal precedence? Can we just read them on our own? Do we have
you can. I'm going to read them out loud as well. Emmanuel says, "Hi all. I am very excited to be appointed as a member of the BAC. My experience last spring was fulfilling and truly enjoyed helping groups bring impactful programs to campus. I understand the precedents and criteria for evaluating events, so it should make the transition period onto the committee a lot easier. I'm also familiar with the time commitment involved with this position and have made sure to limit my involvements and commitments for next semester. I look forward to being on the committee next spring and making a difference on campus. Thank you, Emmanuel." From Jack. "Dear SGA, this semester I have had the privilege of serving on the BAC. Looking back, I have found the experience to be an incredibly rewarding way to get involved in the Colgate community. The BAC has allowed me to see proposals put forth by a multitude of student-led organizations across campus, and I find this collegiate spirit to be contagious as well as motivating to be around. I love interacting with fellow students as they work towards developing events that serve our community in a positive way. In that same vein, it is always very fulfilling to watch marginalized student groups and organizations create diverse atmospheres that would not be able to exist without the fiscal assistance provided to them by the BAC. In this way, I want to serve on the BAC to help fellow students achieve their goals of impactful programming. This is something that very few students have the ability to see firsthand, and I count myself lucky for being able to consider myself one of the chosen few. I hope you will confirm my appointment to the BAC so that I may continue doing what I enjoy. So yeah, if there's any questions for Nick or Margot, now would be the time to ask.
Do you believe in fiscal responsibility, and are you willing to deny funding to any group that does not share a similar belief?
That's pretty much the only thing that we can judge proposals off of is their fiscal responsibility. We can't judge it off biases or personal preferences or anything like that. So yes.
Yeah, I agree. I think it's important to go into things with a very objective viewpoint and viewing them from a fiscal responsibility standpoint because, as Margaret said, that's what we can evaluate them on.
How do you judge fiscal responsibility with budget proposals or budget requests?
So one thing was price of airfare, price of hotel. Are they choosing the cheapest option or the most comfortable option? Another thing is, are they cutting expenses where they can, food, hospitality needs, and are they negotiating it all with their contractors or agents that they're using?
I think at the same time you have to make sure that the fiscal responsibility, I guess it's not very good word to use, but that the money that they are requesting is allotted towards a number of students that it can reach a broad variety of students and not just a few individual students. However, there are programs that are very impactful for a few students, and I think at the same time it's important to make sure the money is being allotted in ways that can impact the most people possible.
Sure. Yep.
So if you have a limited number of funding and you have more requests than you have funding, how do you determine which clubs get funding and which clubs do not get funding? How would you pick which ones to fund and which ones not to?
Well, I'm pretty sure it's kind of first come, first serve with what money's in the bank. So the clubs that come to us at the beginning of the semester, obviously, they're a little bit less in the gray area of not being funded as long as their proposal is responsible and all that.
And at the same time, like as I previously said, making sure that the proposals that reach the most number of people and are using the money in the most responsible way would obviously, in my mind, have more of a preference than those who are not.
There was talk yesterday at the social housing forum for like non-GLO groups to get funding for social events. Do you guys agree with BAC funding social hosting for non-GLOs on Broad Street?
I think so. Yeah, I mean, as long as it follows any safety, security protocol that the school thinks is important, I think that's a great thing.
Yeah, I agree. I think that provided that there are safe atmospheres, they can be more inclusive people and reach a wider variety of students than Greek-like organizations typically reach, so I think it would be very worthwhile.
Any other questions?
I was just going to motion
Well, we're a little out of ourselves right here from a couple people. But are there any other questions before Nick and Margot leave the room? All right, thank you. We will get back to you shortly. So Laurel or David or both, if maybe you could speak a little bit about the selection process and hopefully speak a little bit to Emmanuel and Jack. I think that would be great for everyone here.
So originally, SOC received...
Wait, before they start talking, don't we need to stop live streaming while we're taking votes?
Oh, that's true.
Yeah, we do.
Because that's a closed door portion of the meeting.
Yeah,
so it
it's
does, so the live stream does need to be turned on.
Thank you. Wait, we can...
BAC and as elections commissioner. As parliamentarian, I hope to build on some of the progress that we've made with attendance reform, trainings, and different stuff like that. So that's basically what I have to say. If anybody has any questions, please go for it. Yeah, Jen?
Like what more in attendance reform?
Right. I mean, I don't have like a certain direction that I want to go with it, but I think the conversation kind of needs to continue because I don't think we reached a conclusive answer that everyone was happy with. So, I mean, I just kind of want to keep the conversation going because it has been an issue this semester, and I think it's important to get it worked out. Yeah, Mark?
I think like a big part of being parliamentarian is staying neutral. Do you see yourself, like, do you foresee any problems with, like, any issues where you may not be able to be neutral?
I mean, I would be lying if I said it's not hard all the time to be, to be neutral, but I think I'm up to the task. I'm very able to be objective when I need to be, and I think in this role I can certainly do that. Right?
How comfortable are you telling people to leave out their phones?
Oh. Yeah, I'm not a person that loves conflict. So but I hope to be like the hawk up here.
Y'all think you're being sneaky, you're really not.
I have a question. Are you going to be stepping down from EC if you are?
Yeah, part of being parliamentarian requires me to resign from all other positions, so I will have to step down from elections commissioner if you vote me into this role.
You can't hold any other office as long as
How do you feel about another elections commissioner speaking right now? Is that within the speaking privilege?
That is fine with me.
She doesn't have speaking rights right now. We have to
Failed that question. Do I see a motion to suspend the rules to let elections commissioner Hallie Burke speak? Is that seconded? All in favor? Great. Hallie Burke.
So if you step down and when you step down, will you still be my friend, and will you help me find another person to be EC?
I would be honored to do both of those things.
Okay, are there any other questions for Luke Myers? All right, thank you very much, Luke. Do I see any motions?
Motion to vote.
Is that seconded? Are there any other motions? All in favor of motion to vote? From new business, is that seconded? All in favor? It passes. The chair would be in favor of a motion to insert a new item under new business titled Open Discussion about yesterday's student forum. Is that seconded? All in favor? It passes, I think. Can I get another hand count on that? All in favor? Yeah, okay. So we're going to do that now. So yeah, okay, we can have an open discussion. I guess I'll edit that in a second. I'll just open it up. like I was saying earlier, I thought it was really great that we got so many students there, so thank you all for inviting your friends, telling your friends about it. I personally think that there's nothing better that the Student Senate can do than provide forums like that or an outlet like that for actual students to get their voices heard. So on that front, I cannot imagine that event having been more successful. But hopefully, if there's different things that people want to say about the forum, maybe ideas for the Senate in the spring to take up, or what they felt they gained from the forum, or even what could have been better. So I will let you all have an open discussion about that now, and so anyone can speak.
Wait, I have a question. Are we live?
Yeah.
Yeah, we should be live. Yeah, I don't see any reason why we would not be.
Yeah, Kirk can hear us, so he just knows when.
No, he's texting me.
I think one of the things that was really messy yesterday was that message that got out to the student body as to what the meeting was about, and I think that's something we can improve on as a Senate, giving out one message about what this thing is about.
I agree. I think that's good feedback.
I would also say a lot of people ask me what my thoughts on it were, and I've kind of just been saying that I'm kind of tired of having forums about things that the administration just says what do you want to do, and then we say, well, we don't really know because we don't really know what's going on right now, or what would be better, or what needs to happen. So I am kind of the opinion that I think yesterday might have been a little bit more helpful if maybe there was something we could talk about, or if there was some framework of a policy that they had in mind. I don't know. I mean, it just felt to me like it was a bunch of people who have valid opinions, but don't necessarily have all of the information about what's going on or what needs to go on, and that was kind of obvious at different points. And so I just think it's important that we have something to go off of before we have a meeting like that again, because we're not all that qualified to talk about all of the aspects of social hosting holistically.
I also wanted to say that I thought the way in which the forum was hosted, and this is not on SAB or on anybody in particular, but having it be in the chapel and then having a 15-minute presentation before made it seem more of a lecture and more of oh, this is from the administration, this is what we're gonna do, and then you guys are just allowed to ask questions afterwards about my presentation, about the facts I'm gonna give you. I thought that was a bit off from what I was expecting. If it's a student forum, I wanted it to be run by students, things that we care about, and then just kind of having the administration just listen to us. But instead, I felt it was more we're getting lectured at, and then it's now's your turn to respond to what I the facts that I just laid out for you. And I don't know, I personally didn't agree with that way of conducting the meeting.
Also,
I
kind of questioned the data that was coming through. I don't really know how many people actually take those surveys that seriously. And I think that the way that Dean McLaughlin was looking at it was he was taking it very seriously, whereas I think people kind of who are required to do it just to do it and get it done because they're required to. And I think that I don't know. I do feel like what DZ's saying is that I don't know if this is what you're saying, but I kind of feel like he was basing everything off of that before he even got to hear what we had to say and what we thought was wrong. Where I feel that him being we drink a lot, we might drink a lot, but at the same time he's just going off of stats that don't really tell anything. Whereas it's if someone actually comes forward and is yeah, we have a serious problem here, that's where it really matters. Whereas an online survey that's required to do is just that. It's a required survey that people have to get done.
Who's it required for? Because I'm pretty sure that
it's
first years,
which is the other process. Yeah, first years. So it's for all first years.
And certain sports teams as well.
Going to all these events they're talking about. So when they were talking about the rise in first years, these kids are just in their dorms drinking. Most of the time it's not they're at these events that we're talking about. So that was very misguided data.
Just to be clear, the data that was cited last night was pulled from multiple sources. Some of the data came from national surveys, the perception versus reality data. There was data that was shown from the AIM program for the incoming first year for this year's class. There's also data from last year's senior survey, as well as the heads and core data that surveys have been taken by multiple classes over the last 5 years. This is not simply from the Haven program, from a small sample size of one class of first years. This is from multiple data sets of graduating seniors from last year that have really pinpointed many of the concerns that he went through about what's working and what's not working came directly were direct quotes from the students that just graduated the year before.
Thanks, Drew.
Yeah.
Okay, something that I'm curious about and then also frustrated with is that Dean McLaughlin says that he's not going to necessarily respond to certain concerns until it's been raised by the entire student body. So making changes I want it to come from you. So something that I want us to work on going into next semester is making Senate maybe closer, a pipeline the student body, so that we could take exactly what Dean McLaughlin was saying. I want it to come from the students. Then I'll act. Them needs be able to connect more with the students. Yeah.
If I could just, so the reason that he said that is because when he started doing things, and I recently had a growing relationship with Dean McLaughlin, because when we first got here, I didn't understand it all and thought he was doing it. But recently I've been seeing when he does take action, he gets criticized for co-opting student initiatives. So he'll put all this work on it, and there are certain groups on campus who have truly attacked him for taking their ideas and then making them his own, even though he puts the work into them. And then I think the idea that he was trying to get at is that if he just puts something on us, we're all gonna freak out and say the administration put us on this is you. All he was trying to say is he wants it to come from students because he wants our opinions on it, so that it's not. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Because he is in a difficult position where, and he mentioned this during, about Brenda Tracy too. If he goes and pays for Brenda Tracy, then a lot of students complain that they're co-opting that he's taking the initiative away from students. Right. And it's a harsh reality that has happened with 2 or 3 groups on campus. Not necessarily SGA yet, but that is also something I want us to consider and avoid, because we do have a reputation with the administration online, and there are some groups on campus who have attacked the administration for doing what they've been asked. It's just a difficult line to walk. Yeah. So I just want us to be knowledgeable.
Yeah,
I wish that was conveyed more from his side. I understand that now, but it wasn't as adequately communicated.
Just quickly about the Brenda Tracy thing, I just wanted to clarify the record. Dean McLaughlin isn't opposed to bringing Brenda Tracy or to funding Brenda Tracy. So if I gave that impression last meeting, I just wanted to clarify that. So, but continue.
I noticed that just the timing of the meeting itself, the forum was pretty poor. It was during the week leading up to finals, and I know so many people that would have loved to come that just couldn't because they had so much work to do. So I'm not saying that it could have been handled differently, but being more conscientious of the time and placement of these forums would be a lot better.
Yeah, Dean McLaughlin originally wanted to do it next Monday, so I really pushed back on that. And also about the chapel, Love was reserved, and I didn't think person would be a big enough space, and thank God we didn't do it in person, because that would have been a mess. I'm not here to defend the administration. That's not my job. I didn't know what Dean McLaughlin was going to say last night, and frankly, I don't know if he knew what he was going to say either. And now I have to be careful what I say because I'm live. No, really. And what I think is important is that Dean McLaughlin, he really handled himself in a way that I thought was impressive in regards to taking very difficult questions on the spot and giving a candid answer to them. And so I appreciated that, and I thought that the forum was successful in that regard. I think that there's a problem, well, not a problem, but the thing that I noticed is that there's conflicting interests. There's a desire that I have and that other students that I've been working with this semester, they want the administration to do something about things like sexual assault. I and other students that I've talked to would like to see the social hosting policy say anyone that is holding a party should have food and water, should have a well-lit space, should have sober monitors posted. And I think those are good initiatives, and I think that the students that I've been talking to think those are good initiatives too. But then you have the people that fear that if you add more restrictions, groups will go off campus. And that's a perfectly valid point as well. So I think it's a difficult spot to try to balance making a safer party culture, but not pushing groups off campus. And I think that last night's forum really highlighted just how difficult it is to walk that line. That was what I walked away with.
I would agree with Eli, but I do think sometimes those people are the same, and that's the issue. The same people sometimes who are yelling at the administration, do something. Doing something is restrictions on people. There's no way to avoid that. I don't know what people think is going to happen that isn't going to involve restriction. So then people are yelling, find something to do about sexual violence on this campus. Figure it out. You're the administration. Take care of students. That involves restrictions. So then when the school suggests restrictions or limitations in a way, people are like freaking out. Well, you can't have it both ways. I mean, either there's going to be safety with restrictions and moderation, or I don't know what, unless anybody can offer me like an actual tangible thing, like they could do this that wouldn't restrict but would help. But also, let's be realistic about the law that people seem very confused about either. A lot of the administration's restrictions on what they can do come from legal, like the Constitution or literally the state laws. So really the autonomy falls, I mean, a big part of the failure is us, the students, every single one of us, like not one of us with the exception. And then the administration is definitely not reaching what they should be doing, but at the same time, we freak out when they do anyway. So what are we really telling them? Like, I think we should really be conscious, what are we really asking for? What are we saying, and then how are we acting, and how does that translate to the administration?
Well, I actually think it's kind of two divided questions, because the first one about like, if you make things too difficult, people go underground, which is the argument, right, is about like enfranchisement, and that's a no-brainer. I mean, you just allow more Greek-led organizations to come to campus. Less controlled. There are lots of people who want to be in Greek-led organizations. There are groups who probably would want letters if they were given the opportunity to. And that's just a super simple solution, in my view at least, to that problem. And then as far as, but you are absolutely right, as far as assault prevention. Like, I see no reason why a lot of the measures that we're talking about to help with that would be cumbersome to the point of not allowing smaller groups to host events. Like having sober monitors is like, so the number of sober monitors you have is equivalent to the number of people you have. So fewer people is just fewer sober monitors. Like that's not prohibited at all. So I think that's like half right with regard to two different issues, if you know what I mean.
I think the dean is like kind of thinking way too broad as to like shutting down like drinking culture on campus, which is like bigger than him or anyone, and that's not gonna stop on like, people are gonna go out no matter what. But I think two things we can do that are very easy are make it easier for non-GLOs to have parties in all the houses that we have that are empty, and to make it easier for female groups to have parties, which currently is very few and far between, and GLO or not could get around the brothel rule by renting out a space and having it at like a third party area. And I think also the non-GLO group should have a fund that they can pay for parties. Like we just took out $100 million. It can't be that hard to enable them to pay for parties and have not reduce the amount of male-dominated groups having all the parties.
Yeah. Well, also what I'm going to say is that like a lot of, I think a thing that Dean McLaughlin missed is that when we're talking about like high-risk drinking behavior, he went to these like surveys, but he didn't really ask people that are in those spaces that are like doing that and like how can we actually fix it. Like a lot of the focus was on parties, and I get it, social hosting, it's about parties, but like a large part of like serious scary drinking culture is just kids doing like drugs and alcohol in their dorms and just like knocking back Recipe 21 like that's serious, like very scary drinking, and that has nothing to do with the party. And like if we were able to ensure that students had a safe place with water, with like food that they can eat, like a space where they can like party and like just like not be in their dorms like ripping shots and like doing drugs, like that is like scary stuff that like people get hurt at Colgate all the time. And that's just because we have no outlets for those students. If you're a freshman guy, especially, like, you're not doing anything except like drinking in your dorm or like going to the job. And that's like realities that we face because like that's like the students that Colgate takes, like because we're in the middle of nowhere, because there's very limited social outlets, like kids get really drunk and like it gets really cold and like kids get really drunk at this school. And, like that's something that we have to, how can we tackle that and how can we tackle like actually like stopping that like with a real solution and not just like, oh, we know that there's bad drinking culture, but like what can we actually do to like prevent that from happening?
Could you just clarify the beginning of your statement? You said Paul didn't ask, should have asked you?
Right, when he's talking about these like social hosting, he didn't really talk to any of the members that are actually hosting social events.
That's actually not true. He talked to the ex-president of your fraternity.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, he talks to me, but
who
like
has
still.
over 273 registered.
I know all about his meeting with Alex, but like, I think that.
But then what you're saying is in direct contradiction to what you just said, because you did, and Alex wasn't the only Greek member that he spoke to who's hosting parties.
I just think that there's people, like the people that he's trying to target and ask, like Mahady is great at asking like these old like fraternity presidents are great, but like they also don't really get like what freshmen and so like that's kind of far connected from the members that he sat down and had dinner with. Like there are other people that like are very pertinent to this discussion that just weren't asked because we're too like I want to say like afraid or we're not like candid enough to ask like, members of Greek life or candid enough to ask members that like drink very heavily. You know, like we just feel like, oh, we're gonna put those people in a group and like here's statistics that show that it's bad. But those people's experiences at Colgate would really be helpful for like figuring out how can we stop dangerous drinking and like substance abuse at Colgate.
I'd love to hear from Senator Greenberg.
I think in response to that, a really important point that was made in that forum that may have been lost was kind of about power dynamics and equity. This isn't only about fraternities and people who typically host social events. This is about helping people who have been disempowered or hurt by the social system here enjoy themselves and have a good time and have kind of equal footing if they want to host their own event. So I think that should really be part of this conversation as it continues.
Okay, I'm gonna echo that because I think that like yesterday got a little bit sidetracked from like the original intent was to talk about how to make parties safer and more inclusive for like non-Greek members, and so I'm just wondering if like there's any way we can make this more of like a continuous discussion, like more forums, so that maybe are like advertised differently. Just because I think maybe the message that got across was that Dean McLaughlin was here to like roll out a new plan, and so people kind of came up in arms, whereas like this was really him just like trying to get people's feedback. So I'm just wondering if we can like have more forums. So I don't know how people feel about that.
Do you want me to answer it?
Yeah.
Well, I don't know if I'll be standing up here next semester or not, but yeah, I think that we should consider like moving the conversation in the direction that talks about more like what we can do to make sure this is a productive dialogue. Obviously, if you weren't there or you were there by now, you know what the central things that were discussed and what the general ideas that we should be talking about are. So maybe I would challenge the senators and myself as well to consider like what ways we as the Senate can move forward in the spirit to make sure this was a productive forum. Yeah, I'm not gonna call on people.
I think the main point that I got out of it as well is that this is a dialogue that needs to continue, and this is a great first step to have this forum, but this can't be the end point. Like, I think that, I think hopefully we impressed some points on Dean McLaughlin that he hadn't maybe realized before, but I think that not every single person was represented at that forum, and I think that we need to continue to have those conversations and continue to talk as the policies are made and hear which sort of policies are being emphasized and which ones are not.
Yeah, just out of curiosity, do you know if like there's going to be a policy in place when we come back in the spring, or will it be like a sort of presentation and like more forums once, like I guess, ideal policies are drafted?
Well,
I mean, me and Drew are part of the group that's writing it, so where I think that the intent was to have one written, but I think now probably it's going to be a longer process, more like I think Jen might have mentioned it, but I don't know, or no, maybe it was Ryan. Bringing something that we write in front, I'm assuming it's going to move more into that direction. I don't want to be quoted on that.
Yeah, of course.
I don't think that our timeline is as fast approaching as we had intended at the beginning of the semester after
last time.
Yeah, I mean, before we talked about having this forum, he was planning to go ahead and make a policy.
Yeah.
So I think that this forum can be viewed as really successful in the sense that he now has heard from students and realizes that he needs to maybe take a step back and hear and continuously hear from students. Somebody can correct me if I'm wrong, but that's my impression.
Yeah, that's also my impression.
I feel like SGA next semester should have like a student-led open forum where we like gather ideas of like feasible things that we can do as SGA, as Senate, like things that we can enforce and do on our own without having to be like, oh, like administration, do this for us. Like Derek was talking about, like the change is gonna come if we do it. Like we have to do it ourselves. And so I think if we have a student-led and student-focused discussion that can produce feasible outcomes, that this body can work on legislation and produce outcomes that can better the social hosting at Colgate, I think that would be very helpful. And also, it's been waiting for a super long time.
I'm gonna go 30 minutes and it's okay. So he kept talking about like this change and what was it, like cultural shift. He mentioned that like 15 times and it was like so ambiguous, but I feel like the students that come here, like I'm obviously like a sophomore, so I've only seen one first year class, but I feel like it's like a duplicate of my class. So I don't understand, like he like, it seems like every year like has this like huge drinking problem. So like, why don't we invest in like other parts of the school that will like attract different types of people and like diversify our freshman class or first year class rather, so that we have people that are like going to like the art center on the weekends and like doing other things, or like I don't know, like wilderness people. I don't know what. No, really, that like go on hikes on the weekends. Holy people, yeah. So like, that is
yeah, basically, like, just to reiterate that point, I think there was, like, one point of contention last night was, like, between the students and the administration that was, like, kind of unproductive, and, like, maybe potentially unnecessary, and that's why I think your, like, idea of having a forum that's, like, student-led could be really, like, really great. Maybe even, like, a slices and suggestions, like, super casual, informal, like, where people give tangible lists of, like, things that could be done, like, well-lit spaces, like, along those lines, water, things that, like, are specific that could be listed on a website, as requirements for hosting. And additionally, I think like the general consensus amongst everyone there last night was it needs to be more clear and more accessible for funding for groups who are non-GLOs to either find spaces to host and host, or to host in their own spaces like CA or La Casa, which are, I mean, they've hosted great events. It's just, like they said, it's so hard to kind of make those happen. So yeah, going off that, like even if it's just like, I mean, he showed a picture of the screenshot of the website last night. Like, it's not easy to read. It's not easy to go through. Like, it's there, but like, how many people actually look at it, you know? And like, to make something that's more accessible to the rest of the student body, and encourages more people to start hosting in maybe ways that don't involve alcohol, I think would be really productive.
Yeah. On that note, it is true that the current policy is like really difficult to find online, and there's like discrepancies between there's like multiple copies. So say what you want about the Lafayette policy, but I do like how clear and concise it is to know what you have to do. So I would say that we should definitely push for at least more clarity. I think that's a good suggestion.
Do we know why? Like what you were just saying was a good point, and I don't know the answer, which is why I'm asking all of you. Do we know why it wasn't? Like you said, we should give a list of suggestions or something. That was kind of what I thought it was supposed to be, and it didn't end up being like that. Do you know what, and maybe this is kind of what Jen was saying, is that the environment that made it not that?
No, it's because the administration didn't give us anything to work on. And I actually don't blame them, like they didn't know, but it was like we all came in with absolutely nothing.
But
and it's like, where are we supposed to start with nothing? Like, we don't know.
But I think it was supposed to be past experience.
But that goes off of like the way that it's advertised. I think the way that it was advertised is people like, everyone came in with like their Greek letter organization group sitting together being like, we're gonna claim our territory, we're coming in for you, D. McLaughlin, like you're not gonna take away Fraternity. So like, basically that's that people went in thinking of, and like we just need to figure out how, like what they're gonna expect versus like what we expect is going to happen. Like it was, like I think we just need to like lay out more like what's gonna happen next semester, like in terms of like what the end goal is.
Targeted questions?
Yeah, maybe, but also like I think it would be very beneficial if we had like a specific meeting designated like for Greek letter organizations, like and the dean of the college for social hosting, and then something for like more open like non-Greek letter organizations, like making it more open for them to host parties. Yeah. I just that way like you have like a target, and then you also have like a goal of like what you're trying to accomplish.
Also like a discussion on like specific like ideas, like sort of like a draft form with like, I think that would be a really good idea because people were kind of like, I think a lot of people that were getting up to the microphones too were sometimes like saying certain things that Dean McLaughlin didn't even have in mind. Like, you know, like taking, for example, what was written in the, like the Lafayette, their social hosting policy. So, and using that as like, oh, this is what ours is going to be like. So maybe like a draft of what some of the ideas are going to be, and then a form off of that would be beneficial as well. So
I think it's really important that like if we have when we have this forum, we can like produce like a set like list or like what the consensus is that we want, because it's pretty clear that the team like can make like the numbers or anecdotes kind of fit what maybe he wants to see versus what we all want to see. So like if we could submit like something from forum, like the minutes or whatever, and get like this is a chance to get what we all want to his desk. So like it's clear to him that we like whatever we want is in front of him when he's making this policy.
I want to chime in quickly. There is a reason that we did not bring up the policy forward last night because we didn't want to talk. We wanted to be at a blank slate. The goal here was really to try to get student input. I'm thinking of what, if we create the policy from the ground up with no prior knowledge or just taking in people's experience, real experiences, what does a successful policy look like on this campus? The goal is really collect as much feedback as possible. Any idea on the is on the table. We are trying to go at this from as wide a net as possible and really develop something that works for Colgate.
I feel like a problem with that though is like coming in, we're all thinking this is about frats. Like that's the main idea of this. Everybody's thinking it's about frats. We're trying to stop frats, like, and that's what people came in. So if all we're gonna come in on a blank slate is talking about that, then that's all we're gonna get out of it. And that's also the thing to talk about like ourselves. Like there's more to like social hosting than just about this and drinking. Like we need to have like. Another big thing is we have more things outside of this, like more social events during the night. Like there's nothing to do. Like, we're all aware of that. So if we just only focus on that and not building stuff outside of that, then that's all there's going to be. Even if we put restrictions on it, there's still all going to be.
For a student-led forum to be successful, I think the last forum showed that very well, but we need to set expectations, not in terms of policy, but in terms of what we can do as a body if we are to host that. So I think we have to come up with something or just like some way to inform the students of what we're capable of.
Yeah, also,
Laurel's trying not to be rude, but she's been with us for
No, I think that that's such an excellent point, and I have sort of been thinking just from the BAC's end, like how can we streamline the process for clubs and organizations that aren't GLOs, like so that it doesn't take 4 weeks to plan an event and make it happen. Like there needs to be an expedited process because nobody's thinking that far in advance. And I think there were some really interesting comments made about maybe houses on Broad Street that aren't GLOs getting funding at the beginning of the semester. I think that that's something that we should definitely think about considering, maybe having a block grant for those houses. And I don't really know where that would begin, if that would be changing the bylaws, but I just think clubs and organizations being able to spontaneously plan events, that needs to happen, and right now the BAC process, we're constantly like 2 weeks behind just by the nature of like the system and get involved in all the qualifications you have to have like running a club. So that's I don't know. Just wanted to throw that out there because I think that's a really good point.
Yeah, I also think that was a great idea. Because I feel like one of the biggest problems that I feel like a lot of people are, at least probably not here, are thinking about is like, where else can you host these parties? I mean, you have houses on Broad Street that have been having parties in their basement for years, and they just have not been in use at all. And I think that like you could recreate an atmosphere in those places that is like very fun. Like everybody would be like willing to go there and have a good time. But my original point that I was going to make was that I kind of feel like, it's not that like the way we publicized this was wrong, but I feel like anytime you have a student forum about something this crucial, it's inevitable that people are going to talk about what they want to talk about, even if it's not on topic. I think that Dean McLaughlin made a good point, and he said it multiple times, like, we want to know what works and what doesn't work, and I think people strayed from that and was just like, I'm really scared about this, what will you do here? Whereas like other people made points where it was like, this is what I've seen in my history of social hosting, this does not work. Like I made a point about like third-party security, that just does not work in my opinion. And I think a lot of other times people were just like, oh my God, like please don't get rid of frat life, like they're just gonna go off campus. Whereas like that really, in my opinion, that has nothing to do with social hosting, it's just like, that's a policy change about Greek life. So yeah, I think like, I don't know if there is any way to really police that, because if somebody starts talking, you can't just be like, no, don't start talking about that.
Well, the administration could have, but if we put a student up there, it's less of a power dynamic, so.
Yeah, wait, what do you mean?
Like, I mean, if a student were up there moderating, do you think it would be better for, because like Paul McLaughlin, they're watching him say, stop talking, that's off topic, that's bad, it's less bad if the student's doing it, right?
I guess it looks less bad, but you're still in front of a bunch of people and you want to embarrass yourself and saying something that you like really care about, even though if it is off topic. I mean, I don't know.
I was also under the impression as well that there would be a student moderator. I thought it was going to be you.
So there were originally supposed to be 2 microphones on stage. I have to say, I don't really imagine that I would have been able to contribute much during the question and opinion, because a lot of people came wanting to hear from the dean about what the policy would be and what the policy was going to look like. I probably would have left crying if I was on stage, because I don't think I would have been able to handle some of the questions. I mean, once again, not here to defend Dean McLaughlin, but I really do think he did a great job, like, candidly answering questions. And I would caution, if we do a student forum, I'm not opposed, but just consider, like, yes, we can do this, but would it just be the same thing all over again with a student holding the microphone? We would want to find a way to make it different. And at the end of the day, you know, without the dean there, it's really good to bring all the students together to talk about these things, but then you still have to relay that information in an effective way to the dean. So that's why I think it was effective to have someone who's actually the one calling the shots on stage, because when it comes down to him making the final decisions between the policy, I think a lot of the stuff that he heard yesterday is really going to leave an impression, and I hope that it does, at least.
What if you did a no talking thing, like you texted in your questions or something? And then like if he could pick and choose what he wants to read and what he wants to talk about. And then like if somebody's afraid to actually say something, then he could just all you have to do is text it in. But you're sitting there and you hear his answer to it.
Yeah, I guess I could have taken on a role of like moderating, in the sense that I would take up the questions, or like I could have received like anonymous questions, or just simply fielded the questions. And then sort of like when like Joe Biden came to campus and like President Casey was up there, like fielding the questions, and yeah, I could have served as like an intermediary. I don't know if that would have made things different or not, but I mean, yeah, the anonymous question thing is interesting. What I'm curious, I mean, maybe you don't have an answer to this, but what kind of things do you think people wanted to say but didn't feel comfortable saying?
I'm not really sure if it's that. I just think that it would be easier for somebody to get their point across if they could type it out and like see what they want to ask and then like just send the message. And I also think that like it's not about what somebody would say, it's about who would say it. So if you have somebody who has a great idea but they don't want to go up and like walk up the lane while everybody's looking at you, they could get their point across in a different manner.
There were also a couple of times, just to go off that, there were a couple of times yesterday where people just weren't able to actually articulate what they were saying properly, and regretted going up. So typing it out and having them see it and think about it would be awesome.
Yeah, I mean, would it maybe like take away some of like the student agency or the voice to just have Dean McLaughlin on stage like reading out questions? Because then like he would be doing like kind of all the talking. I definitely think like, yeah, the chapel probably wasn't the best space because yeah, like it's intimidating to like walk down the aisle and like grab a microphone and like, especially if you're someone who like feels they have like a marginalized voice on campus, like I can imagine how that would be very like fearsome to do. So I definitely think that's a great point. But yeah, in terms of like Dean McLaughlin just kind of reading off questions and answering them, I don't necessarily know if that would have been better.
The one thing I'm
feel free
saying
to
though is that
disagree.
like I wouldn't see it as like you send it in before, but you could have the option to send it before. But I think like a live thing where you're sitting in the crowd, I mean, most of us have our phones on us as it is. Just like someone asks a question and then like something pops in your mind, you're like, oh okay, like let me send a follow-up question to this. I think like that would still work in any sense. Like it's not like you have a set amount of questions before you go into it. It's just like you're there and you can text anytime you have a question or something that pops up. This is just all hypothetical.
I don't know like how I feel about that. Like just I don't know how I think about it. But in terms of I think what happened yesterday and how we can make the conversation a little bit more productive, I think the way I see it is that there's two separate issues at hand. Pre-letter organizations already have the funds and know how to throw parties. We have to make sure that they're like as safe as possible. And my opinion is that they are of beginning or already doing that culture change and are already like ready to sit at the table and say, okay, we need to have water at our parties. Like that's something they've been doing already. So I think that that can be implemented in a way that doesn't have to do with a student, like the part of the student body that needs the funds and means to throw parties and have social spaces. In terms of that, like I just think of like hearing of what some of the other students said at the forum and like what you said to me when I texted you, I was like, what is tomorrow gonna be? You said literally if you were to write your own social listening policy, what would it look like? Like the one girl that spoke about the DJ, like being a student DJ, she brought up things that I never would have like thought about but are so necessary, and I think we need to give people like that a voice in order to make the policy equitable for them to host parties. And like asking people that aren't in regular organizations to say like, write your own policy, what like roadblocks do you have in trying to host stuff and how can you change that? Like maybe I just think too positively of the student body, but I don't think anyone's gonna come back with this insane plan that's like, you know, like totally dangerous and horrible and illegal. I think people are gonna have realistic solutions and realistic social hosting policies that are also like realistically allowing them to host social events.
Okay, I do think that's a really great point. One thing that was said, Louis Berkowitz, I believe said like, what if you created a task force with like a leader from like every sector of campus? I think that's an interesting idea. Something Senate could do is write a resolution, something we did not do this semester, and say we would call on the administration and the dean of the college's office to assemble a task force that is representative of GLOs and non-GLOs, and I mean we could specify which groups we think deserve representation and not. And in that way, we would call on the administration to include a group of leaders to craft a policy. That is something that's totally within the realm of the Student Senate. I don't know if he would listen to that resolution, but that's just an idea that I have. And I think like we should now, maybe in the next like 2-3 minutes, as we wrap up this conversation, I would definitely urge like I guess tangible suggestions from senators as we move on to the next semester.
Can I just respond to that?
Yes, please.
I think we can do that now. I think we can reach out to organizations that people know want to host things and say, come up with your own social hosting policy, talk about the roadblocks that you have in the administration, and hopefully they listen to it, and I think they will because they're redoing the whole social hosting policy, so they have no reason not to. And it like will have hopefully there's realistic solutions that
I want to say about that resolution, I mean, obviously I'm not going to be here next semester when that would take place, but in my experience, task forces are where things go to die, so I don't, and also I don't know the plausibility of creating a fully like diversified task force because it would end up being his friends and friends and friends and friends, because that's how things work. A couple of things. So I really like the idea of electronically submitting questions. I don't think that should be the entire forum, just because I think there's something very powerful in someone asking him a question in person, that if he ducks, if he avoids, if he doesn't answer, or whoever is speaking, everyone knows that he's ducking it, he's avoiding it, he's obfuscating, things like that. A third thing that was a big problem going into it, and he mentioned it right off the bat because he was kind of warned beforehand that people had expectations of what he was going to say, was that we as student leaders need to do a much better job of something. I don't know if it's only a thing that happens at Colgate or if it happens at other schools, of group me rumors that go around. Like it started in the SGA group me, about 4 people, and then I know what happened in other group meetings of things, like just I don't even know where they came from. Like I don't know why the Lafayette policy was brought into a conversation that has not, even though he was at Lafayette, there's not anything to do with what he wants to do here.
Tangible idea for social hosting. We should just take like 50 grand from like the school's budget out of the 100 million, just renovate the Fiji basement, put like lights in, clean it up, put speakers in, and then just have that be a rented out space for non-GLO organizations amongst other places where they can just host parties in. I don't see why, why we just don't go ahead and that doesn't have to be Fiji basement. It could be like many of the other like old GLO houses that exist on Broad Street. It's also like if they just got people in who knew how to throw parties. I think that's one thing about social hosting is that like we talk about social hosting, but the people that kind of understand like how successful social events go don't really voice their opinions as much. But I think if we could just get students to go in there and be like, yo, this would be really cool, this would be a really awesome, fun space, alcohol or not, just for students to come together, and have it be student-driven, not administration like school-driven. Because when the I feel like when school does construction here, they just make things look like doctors' offices, in my opinion. But anyways, if we were to like have the students do that, I would be in favor of that.
I think like the 2 things that hold back like non-GLO groups from having parties that can be inclusive are not having the place to have it and not having funding, because and basically what is like so easy to do, could happen in an instant, is let these houses that are empty have parties in like the main area and take out like X amount of dollars and they can use it to have parties and boom, you're having a party. It's like, it's so simple. It's so simple. I don't know. Yeah, that's pretty simple.
Yeah, I would just chime in. Not really sure how to phrase this, but basically I've taken part in like a non-GLO party on like campus property. Like last year there was a Planned Parenthood like fundraiser party in 110 Broad, which is formerly the Deke House. It's a massive house, like you could do a lot with it. But you know, these spaces are great. I think that probably it's the latter, not necessarily the renovations, but the like advertising how to do it and like really promoting it and saying like this is something that you can do, because like, yeah, other groups should be doing that as well. And like the more groups that do it, the more legitimate they become. You know, people like probably are not as inclined to come to a party at like 110 Broad as like a GLO party. But if more people do it and if it becomes more accessible, then over time, like these like non-GLO parties at these locations will become like the norm, and they'll have more success at getting attendance, or at least that's my 2 cents.
I was thinking that perhaps, like, since you said that it's something that they need to learn, perhaps that could be a part of the required leadership trainings that these clubs can do, like, that these clubs are required to do.
So I'm of the opinion that non-GLO and GLO organizations should host like co-op social events. I think that's something that never happens at the school, that like I think happened like a bit last year, but I think that would just open up so many avenues for social outlets, and I would love to see that. That's something we can do now. That it's just that's like a student culture thing that we haven't gotten to yet.
Although I think that's a great idea, although I will say that functionally, doing that has the same problem as asking non-GLO groups to just like host big parties, because like from a risk perspective, I would feel kind of uncomfortable doing that, just like with people who don't really do this sort of thing usually. So I'm just saying like that might be have like part of leadership training or
What do you mean?
was it like sober monitors and stuff like that, like just having a risk management.
You have to be tips trained to.
That as well. Yeah.
That is
you can just do all that, like all those same trainings that they actually want to host events. Just like dealers do, and they take all liability on themselves.
Just maybe next semester we should have an SGA party at 110 Broad.
Yes.
With just like you're lying, blow it up. I can't suggest that.
You just saw.
To those at home, just a quick plug in the spring, 110 Broad. See you there. All right, so yeah, let's wrap it up. Are there any final comments? Maybe someone who didn't get to speak yet. If not, this will obviously be a conversation that's ongoing. So yeah, any final thoughts, comments? Yep.
Could we create like a path for clubs to do this? Because like not all clubs want a social host. So like if a club really wants a social host, they'll have like these things spelled out for them. This is what you need to do. Blah 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 blah. Like could that be done?
Yeah, I do think that we should call on the administration to make like really clear guidelines for like if you want to be a group that has a party or social hosting events, like this is the steps that you have to take. Here's the process. That type of thing to make it, to like streamline it and make it really accessible. Yeah, I think that's a huge part of the problem. Any other thoughts? All right. Thank you all for that productive conversation, hopefully. All right, good to the order. I wanted to say one thing quickly. Maybe I'm assuming you've actually all forgotten this, but there was a bill that passed that called on me as the speaker to appoint a transparency liaison. In case any of you are confused why I didn't do that, there were 2 meetings left, and I thought I would continue to just finish out the semester with what we have here rather than like transferring all the programming. But yes, in the spring, whoever's the speaker should certainly do that. State of the Association, Thursday, 7 p.m., free rig. Invite your friends. You'll get to.
This is mandatory unless you have an excuse for Senate people.
So yeah, if you can't make it, you should email Nicole just as you would for any other Senate meeting, because we passed the attendance bill, so this stuff like will impact you if you don't show up. One sec. I'd like to thank our parliamentarian Molly for wonderful public service. We need more public servants like Molly Nelson. And with that, I will take any more announcements and thank you all for listening. Yes. Yeah, please don't leave yet.
Also, Will Stowers and I's last Senate meeting after 2.5 years. So.
Are there any other announcements? Please. Yes.
The staging for the class council bus for the Syracuse soccer game this weekend. Please tell your friends so we can fill 55 seats.
One more announcement.
We should get ads for the live stream so we can make some money.
You're right. I think Kurt is working on marketing, but not about advertising. Wait, the chair would be in favor of a motion to adjourn. Seconded. All in favor? I don't think it passed.
We're gonna ice you, but we forgot to bring the ice.
Thank you all. I have really enjoyed this semester.